and welcome to another episode of Brettcast Movie and TV Talk. This episode, I'm going to be discussing all 5 of the live-action Transformers movies, all in one video. Please keep in mind that this is all my opinion, that each of these will not be as long as my full-length movie discussions, and that there will be spoilers. I can still remember, to this day, the day that I went and watched the first 2007 Transformers movie in the theaters. I remember the first time I saw Blackout transform, and of course my first time seeing Optimus Prime transform. Yes, I do have some nostalgia for this movie, but it doesn't get in the way of being able to look at this movie for what it is. It's a pretty decent movie. It may have a simple plot, but that's okay. I would say the worst things about this movie is the over-sexualization of female characters and the middle school level of humor. Honestly, don't think that any character really develops over the course of the movie. Michaela is just the stereotypical really hot girl that every summer blockbuster movie needs to have. Sam is the average guy that has a crush on said really hot girl even though he knows she is way out of his league because she hangs out with the jocks on the football team. They show some of Sam at school, and honestly, none of the people there look like they're in high school because they all look like they're in their mid-20s. Sam gets dragged into the plot when he buys a 70s Camaro that turns out to be the now fan-favorite Transformers character Bumblebee. B gets in a fight with Barricade and wins, and then sends out the signal for the rest of the Autobots to come to Earth. B also explains to Sam and Michaela that he's a super advanced robot from another planet. Then all is revealed when they meet Optimus Prime and crew, and Prime tells Sam and Michaela that they're from Cybertron, are called Autobots, and they're looking for the Allspark. They need Sam because he has glasses from his great-grandfather that happen to have a map of the Allspark on Earth that Megatron imprinted. And Megatron was discovered by his great-grandfather buried under the ice in the Arctic, which somehow he just happened to activate Megatron's navigation systems. Anyways, Sector 7 shows up and Sam and Michaela get captured, and they also get B since B tries to save Sam but fails. The Allspark is being held in the secret Sector 7 headquarters under the Hoover Dam. They decide the best defense against the Decepticons, who are also coming for the Allspark, is to let the Autobots fight them, and so B goes free. They have the big end fight, Jazz dies, Sam melts Megatron and kills him, and the day is saved. Linkin Park plays in the credits, and that's it. I did skip a lot of details, but that's the basis of the movie. It's not a terrible movie, but it's definitely not the best movie in the universe. But it's probably the best Transformers movie of the 5 that we're going to be talking about here. So, Transformers is just an average movie, and is enjoyable too. The next movie is Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. Where do I even begin with this movie? The humor doesn't improve, and I guess Bay's idea of college is that every girl is a blonde with big boobs and the perfect ass, because that's literally how every American college is in his mind. So, the over-sexualization of females doesn't improve here. They try to make Michaela develop in the movie by not really loving Sam at the start of the movie, and then after a lot of things happening and Sam almost dying, Michaela is totally just head over heels in love with Sam. Sam has a small arc, sort of, because when all hope seems lost and he almost dies, he has a vision of the 13 Primes that tell him he's gotta revive Optimus Prime so Prime can save the day. But before I get to that, I have to talk about many other things about this movie. I know from the behind the scenes of this movie that Michael Bay was adamant about having the Autobot characters known as the Twins in the movie. The Twins are the most racist and unfunny Transformers characters I've ever seen. These are not what Autobots are supposed to be like, and it's funny because Bay has been said about how the Autobots are so good and so heroic, and these two do not embody those ideals of what Autobots should be. It's made worse that they attach Skids to the name of one of these two Autobots, and that's sad because Skids is an awesome Autobot from G1. And Mudflap, he's a part of the Unicron trilogy, which is a very underrated part of Transformers. And they attach his name to the other character. I don't know why one of the writers didn't step in and tell Bay that his idea of the twins is a bad idea and are awful, but now we have to deal with it. There's this character, the military guy, that comes in and tells Lennox that he's taking control because they made a mess when they went to Shanghai to kill Wheelbot. I don't know if military guy knows, but if Lennox and the Autobots had not deployed in Shanghai, there would still be Decepticons roaming around Shanghai, even if they made a mess. How do you kill big robots without making a mess? Anyway, the point of military guy is to be an ass to Lennox and tell him that he has to do things the proper way. Well, Lennox doesn't like that, so when they need to go to Egypt to help Sam, they basically make military guy jump from the plane in a totally different location from where the rest of Lennox and crew were dropping in. Yep, that's how they get rid of guy who is impeding them from doing the right thing and helping Sam. Sam has these breakdowns because of a piece of the Allspark that he has, and Nest has one as well. Nest is the new Sector 7, except they worked with the Autobots. This movie did a lot of going as big as possible in comparison to the first movie. People said that there were not enough Transformers in the movie, so they added a bunch of Transformers. The other thing is that the movie decided to say that Transformers have been on Earth since like 10,000 BC, even though in the previous movie they made it seem like that was the first time they had ever been to Earth. This movie does have the best battle scene, that being the forest battle. This is also the battle scene that Optimus Prime dies, but it's okay because Sam finds the Matrix of Leadership and uses it to bring Prime back to life. Then, Prime combines with Jetfire to kill the Fallen and do some damage to Megatron, but he and Starscream get away. They do a lot of location traveling, which is fine. Devastator is ruined in the movie, and the last thing that people don't like about this movie is that it's much longer than the first movie. Something interesting is that all the Decepticons are coming to Egypt for the big long final battle that I actually remember seeing Bone Crusher. Yeah, you know, that bot that Prime killed in the first movie, Under the Highway. I do give this movie some credit because it was made during a writer's strike and Bay went ahead and filmed several action scenes before the script was complete. That's why this movie is a mess of a movie and why most people don't like it. It definitely could have been a much better movie if everyone had waited for the script to be done, if Bay had waited to film those action scenes, and if Bay had not put the twins in the movie at all. Transformers Revenge of the Fallen is an average movie. Next up is Transformers Dark of the Moon. This movie is a definite improvement from the last movie. The interesting thing that this movie does is that it puts in the timeline of all these movies that the whole reason that humans went to the moon and that America and Russia had the space race is because of the Cybertronian ship that crashed there. That's pretty much what the beginning of the movie establishes, is that there is a Cybertronian ship with possibly important stuff on it. We get introduced in a very sexual way to Michaela's replacement, and that's Carly, Victoria's Secret model. I guess sometime between Revenge of the Fallen and this movie, Sam and Michaela broke up. Even though in the previous movie, Michaela professed her love to Sam, when she thought that he died. Anyway, Carly is pretty much not important and doesn't develop in any way at all. She is just a model that is there to look pretty for all the guys to stare at. Sam also doesn't really develop in this movie, as I think his character actually peaked in the previous movie. The only reason he gets roped into the plot of this movie is because his boss is working with the Decepticons who are killing humans associated with NASA and the moon landing. This movie has a version of military guy from the last movie in the form of Mirroring. She's not as bad as military guy from the last movie, but she's similar in some ways, like she doesn't impede Lennox from doing things, but she definitely acts like the woman in charge. What happens in this movie is that the Autobots go to the moon and retrieve Sentinel Prime and his pillars that form a space bridge. Now, before this movie, the space bridge technology in Generation 1 was something that only the Decepticons had. It was used in Transformers Prime, first as ground bridge and then as it gets upgraded in Beast Hunters as a space bridge. So space bridges is something relatively new in Transformers lore. So they do that, and it turns out that Sentinel Prime has a plan to use his space bridge to bring Cybertron into Earth's atmosphere, and then use human slave labor along with Earth's resources to rebuild Cybertron. Now, aside from the slave labor force, I'm not sure what resources Earth has that Cybertron could possibly need. Also, how does Sentinel Prime know that Cybertron's atmosphere is actually safe for humans? I mean, in Transformers Prime, when the human characters go to Earth, they wear like special suits and stuff because, Cybertron's atmosphere isn't actually breathable to humans. Of course, Prime doesn't like what Sentinel Prime is doing, and everything goes robot apocalypse. The movie has a long sequence that involves Lennox and crew in a tall building and the Driller Bot, which is a minion of Shockwave. Oh, did I mention Shockwave gets wasted in this movie? Yeah, he's in the beginning, he's in the prolonged battle scene, and then he gets killed. Same goes for Soundwave too. Also, Barricade is back in this movie for some reason, though I guess we didn't see him die in the first movie. Prime has his trailer, and it's his battle station for all the upgrades he got when he fused with Jetfire in the previous movie. Thankfully, the twins are not in the movie, and we get the Wreckers, but I prefer the Wreckers as they appear in the IDW comics personally. Still, the Wreckers are much nicer than the twins. This movie has a first and second act, but much like the previous movie, the third act is just a big long battle scene that just kind of drags on. Like the previous movie, Prime is absent for most of the movie and then comes in like a badass to kill Sentinel Prime and Megatron. Even with one arm, you just can't stop Prime from being a badass. Transformers Dark of the Moon is a good movie and is enjoyable as well. Then we come to Transformers Age of Extinction. If you thought that Revenge of the Fallen was a massive movie, then you need to prepare yourself for this one. This was the first movie that took place after the events of Dark of the Moon, and I'm sure that everyone was curious to see where Sam and Carly were going to be in life, but instead, we get all new human characters, and most of the Autobots were new besides Optimus Prime and Bumblebee, because, nowadays those two are pretty much the face of the franchise. So now, Mark Wahlberg is Cade. He has a 17-year-old daughter named Tessa who's dating Shane, and there's this guy named Lucas. None of these people are really characters. Cade is generic white male. Tessa is the hot girl for all guys in the audience to stare at. Shane is generic white male number 2. And he later becomes the love interest after they kill off Lucas, although Lucas was never love interest. But anyway, Lucas was the comedy relief, if you want to call any of his jokes funny. I mean, the humor in the fourth Transformers movie is still middle school level. I mean, they spend a whole scene of Shane and Tessa explaining to Cade why their relationship isn't statutory rape. Why they didn't just make Tessa 20 years old is beyond me, and we could have avoided having a scene like this in the movie that bears no importance to the plot whatsoever. They tell you in the movie that after the Chicago battle, Prime went into hiding along with the other Autobots, yet the only two returning Autobots from Dark of the Moon are Prime and Bumblebee. We get Crosshairs, Hound, and Drift as our new Autobots, not to mention introducing in the beginning of the movie, but not until the last 45 minutes of the movie, are the Dinobots. See, this movie goes back even before the time period they went back to in Revenge of the Fallen, and are now saying that Cybertronians have been on Earth since the time of the dinosaurs, and are the reasons that the dinosaurs went extinct. I swear that this franchise cannot keep its own timeline straight at all. It's like any idea that the writers come up with that is worth putting in the movie, they just say, oh, this doesn't make sense in the current timeline? Well, who cares? It'll all become a new, further back part of the timeline. Anyway, for some reason, all of the Autobots seem to do this thing where they have to, like, squabble, fight with each other. They all do it, and it's so strange that, like, Drift and Hound are having their own little petty fight, and Prime just stands there and doesn't care that they are. The Autobots can also somehow do things like they use B to make fake ID cards to get them into KSI. You know, that business guy, evil business guy works at. When could they do that, and how come we have not taken advantage of something like that yet? Crosshair somehow comes with a parachute installed so he can do radical slow motion shooting in the air shots. Who is our Transformers villain? Oh, that would be Lockdown. He is working with the evil humans to give them the seed that will make Transformium, and Lockdown wants Prime for some reason that is never explained. Like, he just tells the humans that they need to get him Prime, and he will deliver a seed to them. When they do that, he just puts Prime in a cage because that's a trophy for Lockdown? Even though the humans were the ones who captured Prime with their KSI knockoff Transformers? Is it really a trophy if someone else does the work to get it to Lockdown? Honestly, Lockdown is just a big gray villain. One, because, well, he's big and gray and black. And two, because he's just evil because the movie needs a main villain for Prime to have a final confrontation with. Oh hey, the KSI knockoff Transformers come to life and become secondary army fodder for the other Autobots to fight while they're waiting for Prime to show up and win the fight for them? Yep. Prime rides in on Grimlock swinging a sword and killing KSI bots. Oh, wait. I'm forgetting about Galvatron. Yeah, so did the movie. For real, Galvatron in the movie is in it for maybe 5 minutes, and most of that was just telling the other KSI bots to attack and then to say that he will be back, which he won't. The movie ends with Prime slicing Lockdown in half, killing one human, flying off and saving the day. Yep, they decided at the end of the movie that Prime has hidden thrusters in his legs and only uses them once in the whole movie. It's like the Eagles in Lord of the Rings. Why doesn't Prime use that more times in the movie? It would have been so useful many other times. And he also just lets the Dinobots go free to just roam around Earth because that's safe. Cade and crew are all fine, and the rich, previously evil head of KSI guy decides to buy them a new house. Cade is also now fine with Shane and Tessa being a thing because it takes almost dying several times to decide that. Especially when Shane does almost nothing besides some fancy driving from time to time. I think you can see exactly why this movie is a complete mess. Transformers: Age of Extinction is an average movie, but it's kind of enjoyable. And finally, we arrive at Transformers: The Last Knight. Hey, do you remember some of the things that were established at the end of the last movie? Yeah, pretty much none of that made it into this movie. That supposedly new house that Cade and Crow were gonna get? Nope, junkyard. Cade being in a better spot in life? Nope, decided to have a sanctuary for the Autobots in a junkyard. Galvatron returning like he said? Fuck that. No one liked Galvatron one bit from the last movie. So much so that they, without explaining it, bring back Megatron. Shane still being with Tessa? I honestly have no idea at all. They don't say what happened to Shane or why Tessa isn't with Cade at the junkyard in the first place. He has a phone call, a very quick one with her, and that's it. The only thing they continue with from the last movie is Prime flying off into space. He apparently froze up going out there, and just happened to drift and fall into re-entry on Cybertron. The movie opens with a medieval battle scene with King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table in a battle. But there was also Cybertronian knights that helped King Arthur fight the battle, and there's Dragonstorm because dragons are awesome. Look, to be honest, this movie is just as much of a mess as the previous one is. It definitely has the feeling of Michael Bay's last Transformers movie, and so he is going to throw as much shit as he can into the movie and hope to God it all makes sense. I mean, they brought back Simmons, so he could be on the phone for a few minutes in the movie, and only serves to tell Sir Edmund Burton where to find a book in the library that will tell him that Earth is Unicron and wants to be devouring Cybertron. They also bring back Lennox to be Lennox, the badass military guy. Burton has some sort of servant in the form of Cogman, who is a headmaster. They never do anything with the headmaster idea in the movie. Not a damn thing. How cool would it have been to have Cogman turn into a head and take over one of the Decepticons? That would have been totally awesome to see, but no. Bring up headmasters and do nothing with it. This movie also continues to muck up the timeline of all these movies and does it in one scene. Burton has a room in his castle with a table that is supposedly from Cybertron and has a shit ton of photographs of Transformers helping humans throughout all of human history. Let me say, as someone who has read a lot of Transformers comics, they have this mini-series with Transformers in the 1800s, and it's one of those things that makes you go, huh, that's a neat idea, and the designs of the Transformers are unique, but I don't see this as something that could happen in universe. Not here. They flash back to a moment where Bee and Hot Rod helped take down Nazis in World War II. Burton even has the watch that killed Hitler. Like, come on, are you trying to tell me that every human history event happened because Transformers helped us? Why would they help us? There's even little hints of Transformers from past movies. Like in a photograph, there's a picture of Ironhide, and they even have a hilarious picture of Sam. So, there's a girl named Vivian, who just happens to be a descendant of the wizard Merlin, and this makes her our only hope to find the artifact that this movie's story hinges on and centers around. It's a staff. In the beginning of the movie, it's given to Merlin and allowed him to control Dragonstorm. There's a Cybertronian god that goes by Quintessa who wants the staff because on Cybertron it will help her defeat Unicron. Cade gets roped into all of this because he is basically the chosen one, because a dying knight gave him a Knights of Iacon talisman. There's a moment in the movie that Prime, turned into Nemesis Prime by Quintessa, is fighting. He's fighting Bee, and Cade just is like getting in the way. But Bee speaks to Prime, and now Prime isn't evil. Some evil knights surround Prime, and just as one of the knights is about to strike Prime, a sword manifests from Cade's talisman, and Cade blocks the Cybertronian knight's sword, and then all the knights become good. That is the first and last time that the talisman does anything. They spend most of the time trying to figure out how to stop Quintessa. Oh, and Megatron has a combiner named Infernicus, although I wouldn't call what they do combining. Mostly melting together. Anyway, they have to figure out how to stop Quintessa, and that involves Vivian getting the staff. Well, getting to the staff. They do that in the big final battle that goes upside down and has a lot of action. Prime kicks Megatron, doesn't kill him. They all save the day, and whatever. The movie is a lot of the previous movie, but with even more mess and just all the shit that Michael Bay could throw into it. And the plot gets lost in there somewhere. It is essentially just a get the item that will save the day type of movie and stop the bad guys. Hot Rod was useless addition to the Autobots. The additional Decepticons were pretty useless too, as Megatron was the only competent Decepticon. Oh, I almost forgot that they brought back Barricade, who gets one moment to have a fight against Bumblebee, loses and then disappears, shows up in the final battle, and then is gone after that, but not dead. I think the important thing is not what happens in the movie, but what they end on as set for future movies. Megatron and several other Decepticons are still out there. Quintessa is alive and on Earth. Unicron isn't technically dead, I don't think, and the Autobots pretty much went back to Cybertron to rebuild. The Dinobots are still loose on Earth like in the last movie. It really is a shame that the movie ends the way it does, because there were They were so certain that a next movie would wrap up the story from this movie at any point, but we all know that's never gonna happen. Transformers: The Last Knight is an average movie, but is still enjoyable. So, if I were to rank all 5 of these movies from least liked, number 5, to most liked, number 1, it would go something like this. Number 5 is Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, number 4 is Transformers: Age of Extinction, number 3 is Transformers: The Last Knight, number 2 is Transformers: Dark of the Moon, and number 1 is Transformers, the 2007 movie. But Bumblebee is better than all of them, and I have done a full review of that movie, so go check that out. I do enjoy these 5 movies when I want a mindless action movie with robots in it. Thinking about them in detail like this, I can agree that they're not good movies at all. That's all I have to say, so if we had the conversation, leave a comment below. As always, thanks for listening, and goodbye.